It's that day. That day. You know which day. That day. The day when Romeos sing ballads to their Juliets. Well, it's the day when love seems to thrive more than other days. Does anybody really need a Valentine? Ultimately, to love or not to love, that's just someone's choice. Is it the society or is it friends or family that tells? I think it honestly doesn't matter, as long as people are happy. Seems like I'm again giving preach. I'm not here for that though. Outside today, I was ruminating on a couple of things. Even as a photographer, sometimes it feels nice to revisit places through a different lens, a lens of a tourist. Like the one I did in the morning. Why? Perhaps the same reason why people get roses for their loved ones. Love. I just love exploring and traveling. That sound is the sound of the beast, the Golden Gate Bridge. Why spend the day at home when I could have easily spent it outside? Yep. It's not as windy as yesterday. But still, it's a good day out today. What is Valentine's? I see all these people and then I question myself. Seriously, it could be many things to many people, but here's what I think. Sometimes it's nice being a tourist in your own city. I'll be honest with you, I don't loathe the idea of being a tourist in my own city. Having been a photographer, I kind of detest touristy spots, but then again, sometimes it's liberating that way, especially on a day where everybody seems to be just rejoicing the idea of being together. That also begs to ask the question, is it necessary to be together to be happy? What do you think? Definitely, there is a certain sense of liberty in just walking around the city that you call your home and just acting for once as a tourist. You get to appreciate the city in a different way. At least that's how I see San Francisco. I've seen it many a times over the last few years. Always I see it with a different lens. How awesome was the face mask? Literally, people are getting innovative with these face masks. I love creating. Yeah, that's too cheesy. I know. Because wherever I look, it seems like everybody loves what they do. But then, do I really love what I do? Long answer short, pretty much yes. I don't know how I'm saying this, but I know for sure. I do love photography. More than just photography, I think I just love the ability to just create all sorts of stuff. But still, with modern dating apps, I have nothing against them. It just feels science. That's what makes online dating and the whole idea of Valentine's kind of weird. Does that matter? Who am I to say anything about this? Everybody celebrates Valentine's Day. Before we go, I have a quick question. Would you prefer single or would you prefer to be in a relationship? Just think it over. If you do have an answer, I'm curious. Maybe please do drop it down in the comments. Let's have a discussion. Also, a snippet of 13th of February's podcast, which we recorded episode 2 from the Bang Adda, is now going to be with this vlog. So, drum roll, here it is. So, Impostor Syndrome. Whenever we think of Impostor Syndrome, now recently, it always comes to this one game that everybody talks about, which is Among Us. But it's actually much deeper than that. Impostor Syndrome is also ingrained with a lot of millennials. And primarily the most important reason to start with would be the feeling of being inadequate, the feeling of being not enough, and the feeling of not being sufficient. Part of it should be that we could blame social media for it, but there is definitely, based on psychology and based on research, couple of symptoms which makes imposter syndrome give itself a shape and a definition. If anybody ever feels a sense of being a fraud or a fear of being discovered or difficulty internalizing their success or having this sense of perfection even before they're able to manifest a project, those are in a way imposter syndrome. Is there a cure to it? Like, obviously we are going to get to the goods and the bads, but before I give it out to the both of them, I want to say that, is there a cure to imposter syndrome? Well, based on psychiatry and psychology, there isn't a walking cure yet, but it is surely related to other mental health conditions. One would only say that perhaps people should stop self doubting and take up more responsibilities. But then again, that's just the start of it. Imposter syndrome is much more deeper. Now, I would like to give it to Meg. Meg, what and how would you interpret imposter syndrome, and has it affected you, or do you know people that have been affected by it, and or even around you, has it affected you in a way, or have you seen other people getting affected by it, imposter syndrome? So you're saying that we are all, I mean, you just mentioned about imposter syndrome and how you're not an expert in this topic. Neither am I, and neither is Brishti. I mean, we aren't psychologists or psychiatrists. We are just three millennials who don't know everything. But jokes aside, that's true. I mean, just bringing up this topic with three millennials who are not in any scope worthy of talking about this in itself kind of underlies the scope of imposter syndrome ism. But still, in the grand scheme of things, it is really important what what Meg has mentioned, is that he also went through it. And it is also seen that 25 to 30% of high achievers suffer from imposter syndrome. Perhaps it's the innate desire to want perfection, the innate desire to please people, that makes it almost hard not to get there. So even if they are not doing a project, they just feel like they have to get somewhere in their mind, even though nobody tells them. It's like when they look at the mirror. But then that's thing aside, Meg also pointed out another thing about social media, and I want to actually just tackle that a little bit before I um, pass it on to Brishti. Is that I think in the last decade, and I'm not going to name names because we all know names, but social media, specifically a few of them, like our digital passports, have been good for the most, but have also kind of highlighted and accelerated this this issue of imposter syndrome. It has been there, and Meg really beautifully he put it out that he was unaware. I mean, honestly speaking, even I wasn't aware of this completely. But just a couple of months back, I was reading a book and I started actually noticing influencers on social media. And then a week back, I saw this documentary where they were just saying that how influencers are living a life that is only for influencing others in a way to make just the people who are scrolling feel bad. What does that even tell us? What does that even tell that about us as a society? I mean, how is that growing on us? How is that really affecting us? Are we just scrolling on, let's say, Instagram to see a post to make us feel bad about ourselves? I feel that's something that I should now pass over to Brishti. Brishti, I want to tell you one thing is that how do you see imposter syndrome, not just with not just as a single entity, but how do you see imposter syndrome? Like, has it affected you? And have you been able to figure it out? Or what has it done to you as an individual?
All right. Well, this is a pretty heavy topic, so I would like to simplify it first by just defining what imposter syndrome is once again. So, by the study of Dr. Pauline Clance and Joe Langford, they defined imposter syndrome as a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud despite external evidence of their competence. So, one thing that's very evident in people who suffer from imposter syndrome is they are doubting things which have proof of them excelling in it. So, for example, it can be a student. We've often made a joke, right? That there's this student, the topper. We there's a running joke that the topper always cries when they do when they don't get their last 100 out of 100, and if they like get 98, they feel highly insufficient. Like it's a especially in Indian mainstream media, we keep on seeing, we make a joke out of the topper, out of the kid who does not get 100 or feels insufficient because he got 98 or 99. But to think about it, that student is a classic example of imposter syndrome, because to the whole world around him, they can see that okay, a kid has gotten 98 or 99 out of 100, that is phenomenal. But for that child, that the fact that they did not get 100 means like they are not even half as talented as they thought they were. So the first time I heard about imposter syndrome, I was like, ha, I don't have it, because I'm pretty proud of my academic accomplishments. And one of the biggest signs of imposter syndrome is that you always think that you succeeded due to sheer luck. But then I saw what are the kinds of there are different types of imposter syndrome, and there are certain ways to spot whether or not you have imposter syndrome. And as I went through those, I realized that okay, you know what, I do tick a few boxes, and it's important to address this. So the one kind, this is from the Muse. The first kind of a person who suffers from imposter syndrome is the perfectionist. And some questions, like if a person is a micromanager, or a person who has extreme difficulty in delegating tasks to, like, their colleagues or co-workers or friends, or if a person again does not get 100 out of 100, then breaks down, or if you feel your work has not been done to 100%, then it's not perfect. I think when we look at ourselves, if we see that, yeah, if any of these signs match with you, then that can be a bit of an indication that, you know what, you might be suffering from imposter syndrome. Or if you're the superwoman or the superman of your house, like you feel like you have to do everything to your best, and beyond that, you are the kind of person who stays up after work, who puts the extra 2 hours 3 hours, because that's what feels normal to you. Like what other people would see as overtime is what you feel as normal. If you overcompensate because you think that is what will give you validation, then that is a sign of of the fact that you probably might be suffering from imposter syndrome. Or if you're kind of a person that if your confidence takes a little bit of a stumble or a little bit of a take back, if you face a tiny obstacle in in a place where you're doing extremely well, then your entire courage and confidence stumbles down, and you don't know where to start your life because you just made a tiny mistake. And sometimes you probably avoid challenges because it is so uncomfortable and you think you won't excel in it. Then that is also a sign of imposter syndrome. And above all, if you're the kind of person who's like, I don't need anyone's help, or you feel that you are the only person who can fulfill every single requirement of a project, then I think you do have imposter syndrome. I think it's very important to understand the difference between someone who thinks that, oh, I am better than everyone else and I'm the only one who can do it, versus being that if I don't prove to everyone that I can take up everything on my own shoulders, then I'm not worthy of the validation that I'm already receiving. So I had to do a lot of study to try and understand what imposter syndrome is, because it is such a new term in psychology. It is such a new thing people are studying about, that we're trying to see whether or not it's a person making an excuse for being a perfectionist, or in reality it's a syndrome that's really affecting someone's quality of life. Over to you, Akash.
Well, that was really well said, and some fine insight about imposter syndrome. Yeah, let's steer away from social media, because I think everybody just berates social media anyways with imposter syndrome. It's just become a new fan child. But the truth is, what and how does one feel about when you are feeling the feeling of being in an imposter syndrome, or when you're in that feeling? I mean, I know that feeling. Whenever I am doing a project or whenever I do something, I just feel it's never good enough. And I laugh it off that it's a creative inkling, that it's okay, but I don't think it's okay. And maybe I should just pat myself in the back and say it's okay that I fail. Because I feel like we all should acknowledge that. It's okay that you fail. It's okay that you're not perfect. Because another thing, again, I'm going back to social media, but talking about perfect and not perfect, is body dysmorphia. A lot of bodybuilders, a lot of fashion models end up doing things which we know in psychology are anorexia and bulimia because of the society's pressure. As Brishti was saying so perfectly about achievers, they are also some kind of an achiever who are in innate pressure, not directly or indirectly. They want to do it by themselves, but because of a societal pressure, they have to either cut in on the weight or bring out the weight. I feel like we as the society, as just a group of people, we should encourage whatever we are, whoever we are, and stop that comparison, because that's where it really hurts on an individual level. Fun stuff, right? Yeah, imposter syndrome. I'm gonna be honest, I go through it every single day, at least most of the days. Does imposter syndrome happen with even people who are in love or finding love? In the age of pandemic, is online dating the only way? I mean, if there is love that's as pure as creating content or creating any kind of thing, till then, I think we should find love more outside of people than just within some people. Maybe that's when we can be more happy. I don't know, but I think that might be something that I'm working with. Whatever it is, it's Valentine's Day. So here's me giving out love, positivity, and let's create stuff, break stuff. Maybe that's what the world needs. More of love. The kind that makes this world a better place. Enough with being a preach.